All right, thanks everybody. I think most of you probably know me. I'm Pat N0HR. Yeah, I'm going to give a talk tonight on building electronic kits, some tips and tricks for hams to use. And I will admit that part of this presentation, I used AI to generate it because I'm lazy. So, but I like this opening image here. If you've ever looked close, this was actually a stock photo that circulated for a while that people were using. Some companies actually use this in their advertising for like lab equipment. But if you notice, it was a picture of a gal holding a soldering iron, kind of on the hot part. And so yeah, that was floating around a few years ago, but I always thought it was funny. There we go. Just a quick flyover of what we'll be talking about tonight. We're going to go through the just essential tools and equipment and stuff you might need if you're going to get started doing kit building. I know a lot of you guys have done kit building in the past, but if this is new to you, this will be kind of an introduction to things that you can use to have a successful kit build. We'll talk about everything from the supporting tools and soldering techniques and testing and that sort of thing. But then at the end, we'll go through, I built a HF transceiver from the ground up. And so we'll go through that build and just to show you what that looked like. So first, a few essential tools and equipment. I think when building an electronics kit, one of the key things that people get wrong is they choose the wrong soldering iron for the job. So, and by the way, I'll say, I'm not really going to read through all the text on the slides. If you want to go back and look at the text on the slides, you could probably go back and watch the recording. But the idea here is simply choose the right tool for the job when it comes to the soldering iron. If you're doing surface mount soldering, you don't want to use that high power gun. Save that high power gun for something like putting a connector on your coax where you need to transfer a lot of heat and the kind of the precise tip doesn't really matter. So make sure that you have the right soldering iron for the task at hand. The particular soldering station that I bought is this guy. Just bought it on Amazon. I think it was like $90. But I was looking for something that would have a lot of temperature control and a variety of tips, had the cleaning equipment, came with, extra things like the solder sucker and a ground strap. By the way, if you have any questions, let me know if you have any questions as we go. This one also had PID control, and everybody knows PID control. Okay. Next, we'll talk about flux. What is flux used for? Time travel, exactly. Flux is at least the flux solder paste really helps with facilitating a good cleaning of the surface and bond. If you get contaminants on the surface of your joints that you're trying to make, the contaminants can really mess up the electrical connection and the physical connection to the board. So this flux is used quite a bit to help with a good project. Also, you want to make sure you have the right combination of tools in your bag of tricks. So I happen to pick up a few pretty low cost angle cutters and needle nose, and I didn't splurge for these precision screwdrivers from Milwaukee that are in the picture. I just got some cheap ones, but yeah, make sure you have the right tools at hand. And for the particular kit that I built, you want to have a good multimeter as well that will allow you to do even basic things, continuity testing, and you don't need a full oscilloscope. Supporting tools, some of the supporting tools that you'll want to have on hand, a magnifying glass, something that's really going to help you with reading the board, reading the component IDs, being able to see a lot better when you're placing parts. Yeah, it can be tricky and eye straining, and that'll be one of the things that'll make you just want to give up early is inability to see the parts and see what you're doing. Secondly, a set of helping hands can be useful as well. So something that will I call them helping hands, but something that holds the board steady for you and keeps it up off the table or surface so that you can really work on parts easily. That will really help with the process as well. A lot of them that are out there now have, good adjustable clamps and positioning things that like flexible like this guy that where you can bend it around and use it as needed. Particular pieces of equipment that I picked up for this project, I picked up a jeweler's loop like you see on the left to kind of hold up close and see what you were working on. That it was actually a package that came with both of those on the far left side. That one on the bottom has a light on it, and I think some kind of a colored light too. So sometimes a colored light helps. And then all the stuff on the right is the helping hands set up with those adjustable arms and clamps and a big magnifying glass as well, and it clamps onto the table. Make sure you also have good lighting in your area, especially if you're working with small parts and components and need to be able to read all of the components as you use them. Poor lighting will be kind of disastrous for doing a lot of kit building. Workstation setup tips. You obviously want to have your tools easily accessible, keep your area clean, and have your components arranged logically so that you can, you're not sorting through piles to try to find the next part that's needed, that's critical. It's probably one of the biggest things that people do wrong in kit building, or something that causes rework, maybe I'll put it that way, is not having a arranged desktop, and then you wind up putting the wrong part in the wrong spot and have to go back and clean that up later. If you need to get into more advanced projects, certainly you can look at things that are above and beyond a multimeter. So you can look at an oscilloscope or function generator or something like that. But the type, I'd say probably most of the ham kits that I've seen, you don't need anything that fancy. Soldering techniques and best practices. So if you've not done a lot of soldering, this section might be helpful. Kind of the main takeaway here is properly heating the joint that you need to make is key. And we'll show you some examples of that in a second. You need to make sure that you apply the solder well in just the right amount, and then remove the heat so you don't overheat the component. A lot of mistakes are, the result of overheating a component leading to damage. Excess solder usage, I think, as people get going and they're kind of beginners, there's a common error that's made of just like jamming as much solder onto that board as possible. That's not the idea. And bad solder flow can result in weak joints as well. I did hijack this image from somewhere on the internet. And these are examples, I think this was an electronic manufacturing company, of cold solder joints. And you can see how, I don't know if you can tell very well from sitting back there, but just different examples where the joint is kind of a terrible joint. You don't see good connection all the way around at the board level and good flow, and it looks kind of cloudy, like it wasn't properly heated. And instead, what you're wanting to do when you do a solder joint is apply the tip of the iron to both the pad on the board and the component lead, and then come at it from the other side with the solder so that as that pad gets warm enough to melt the solder, it'll just do the job and you can pull the iron away, rather than trying to jam a bunch of solder onto the tip of the iron. You want to maintain your soldering tools and equipment. You want to clean your iron tip and replace any worn out tips. That's probably another thing, especially as you deal with the fine components. Having a worn out tip can be very problematic, and it'll probably cause more frustration than anything. So you want to avoid that. How do you know when your tip's worn out? Actually, a lot of times they won't transfer heat as well, and you'll start seeing problems like this is taking way longer than it should just to get the solder down on the board. That's a clue, but you can also see physical damage sometimes to the tips where it's just, you start to see it kind of chip and flake away. And yeah, good question though. Yeah. a good sign that it's time. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yep. Okay, so you got your components placed and you're feeling pretty good. So it's time to do your initial power up check. Just for me, like just to be a little bit paranoid here, and I've let enough smoke out over the years that I kind of feel like this is a time where I need to go back before I apply power for the first time and verify my connections and check the component orientation and make sure I put the right thing in the right places, but also to look for any solder bridges, because a solder bridge in the wrong spot can just, sometimes it's not bad, sometimes it's utter disaster. So you want to look for any bridges between component pads. You can also do troubleshooting with a multimeter if you need to measure voltage or continuity at certain places or resistance. So, you know, it's often some of these kits come with a troubleshooting guide. So if you've run into an issue, you can start to do some testing around certain components to figure out where you've gone astray. Fixing common errors, you know, electrical issues or troubleshooting that needs to be done usually isn't too bad with most kits. Just, you know, take your time and be careful that you've got things nailed down the right way here. So, all right, building a successful kit. Effective planning is key. So take your time to plan out your steps, read the manual before you go through it. Don't kind of fly by the seat of your pants is kind of the goal here. Organize things and use a checklist if you can to kind of check off your steps. I love a well-written user guide. The kits where you're kind of trying to figure out what the guy means and what's in this picture, it'll just drive me crazy. So there's probably examples of good guides and bad guides. Like my favorite user manual company is Legos. If you've ever helped a kid put together a Lego set, they don't actually use any words, but you still know exactly what you need to do to put the next thing into the next thing. They're just very well organized. And I think they do that so that they don't have to have translations for every language, but it's really effective. And we can all probably think of bad examples. So follow those instructions carefully, and yeah, just attention to detail pays off here, because a few minutes spent making sure you have the right thing in the right place and no solder bridges will pay off in terms of avoiding rework. And then finally, final assembly and testing. After you've done all of that and you're getting ready to turn it on for the first time, just make sure that you've placed everything in the right spot, and then you're ready for a thorough test. I don't know what circuit board this came off of, but somebody silk screened on there that every machine is a smoke machine if you operate it wrong enough. I think that's good advice. So, all right, so let's go through my build of a QRP Labs QCX Mini 20-meter 5-watt transceiver. So my goal for this was I do enough POTA that I wanted to have something that I could throw in a backpack and wouldn't be too heavy, but to have a full, complete HF station in a backpack. So it really is, got a laptop too. There we go. Yeah, I know. Or Mary Poppins or something. So the laptop is just for lagging contacts. You guys all know what a laptop's all about. I have a 20-foot carbon fiber mast to hold an antenna up. So that's very compact to ride around in the backpack. And then in these two bags is a complete HF transceiver kit. This is the radio that I built. And I've got my CW paddles up here with just a cable for that. Earbuds to hear what's going on. And then the transceiver is right there, just smaller than, kind of like a pack of cigarettes maybe. Not too big, but a 5-watt transceiver. So I'll show you you can come up and take a look when we wrap up here, but we'll go through the build process then. So I spent a couple months in Florida this past winter, but there were a couple weeks where I had to come back to town for some strategic planning. Oh, this other bag just holds the battery for it, and battery pack, coax, and fed half-wave antenna. So I was in Florida for a couple months this winter, came back for a couple weeks in January for some strategic planning while my wife stayed down in Florida. So I had some time to kill. So I thought, all right, I bought this thing at Dayton Hamfest about a year ago, and just hadn't had a chance to put it together. The kit itself was, I think they sell it for $55 if you get the enclosure for it, and I don't know, a couple other low pass filter or something else. It wound up being about $100 when you put it all together. So I thought, great. My wife's still in Florida. It's middle of winter. What else am I going to do? I'm going to Des Moines during the daytime for meetings, but in the evening I've got some time to kill. So I'm going to build this over a few nights. The first time I tried to do it, I opened up the bag, and this bag of parts, I realized what had happened at Dayton. The guy gave me the wrong bag, and it was a bag full of feet, the little pads that are on the bottom of the radio. These little rubber pads. It was a whole bag full of nothing but those. So yeah, that was no good. So I had to kind of back up, and he got me a replacement bag. He's a super easy guy to work with. So it's really a pretty good company. Does anybody own one of these besides me? The QRP Labs is the company. The designer's a guy named Hans, and he's out of the UK, but super nice guy. So once I got the replacement parts, my wife was out of town. So of course, all assembly took place on the kitchen table. So broke out the main circuit board. The surface mount components were already installed, so I didn't have to worry about those ICs that you see up there on the board, I was grateful for that. I think he had probably the assembly house that put together his boards did that for him. And then I don't know if you can see very well, but there's some very small capacitors and a pair of diodes there that were also already placed. So those were all out of the way. Surface mount stuff is pretty tricky to do when you're just doing it on the kitchen table. First component to put together was winding this toroid. This toroid is probably the most difficult step of the entire project. So if you get frustrated on step number one and abandon ship, you're probably not alone. You had to wind, I think it was 37 windings in a particular way. And then 1, 2, 3 pairs of like 3 windings that go across the bottom. So it has to be very precisely wound in order for it to work right. So that was the first step. Placing that on the board was a little bit of a trick too. But once you got past that, then you can start placing other components. And you can see here I've got, let me zoomed in a little bit. Most of the components on the main board placed. That includes, you see up in the upper left, a big socket. There's a couple crystals there, some tuning pots, a bunch of capacitors, the main transistors up in the upper right. That's a good chunk of the board progress here on the main board. So I had to complete all of the rest of those. So you can see spots for additional toroids there. That's the L1, 2, 3, 4 spots. So more work to do, but making progress, and just snapped a photo of that. After that board was complete, the next step was to complete the main control board. So by controls, it's to control your volume, frequency, buttons for the front panel to go into menus and whatnot. So that's what this board is. It's a smaller board, so I used one of the helping hands to help stabilize that while I worked on it. Then once that control board was done, the way they've designed this is that smaller control board, they've got a notch out on the main board so that you can drop that down in. So I don't know if you can really see that, but the two kind of meet up, and then there's a offset header. So there's a top side and a bottom side. That top side has the display across the top. So it all kind of, it's a very compact design, but pretty clever the way he kind of snapped all this together to make it fit. All right, so then this is the next step, applying power for the first time. And I didn't plug it into a battery. I just had this DC power supply. I thought I'd power it up for the first time. All right, are we running a pool? Did it work the first time I turned it on? Or did the smoke come out? It worked. It worked. So it booted up. The display looked great. And man, it was really a good feeling to see that thing turn on and just come to life. And was kind of surprised. What the heck? It worked. So anyway, yeah, it comes up and then you need to kind of program it. So it needs to know, oh, okay, I need to be a 20-meter kit because this is a single band radio. It only works on 20 meters and it only does CW. So it kind of needs to be positioned for and set up for the band that it's in. And so you go through a tuning sequence where basically it gets calibrated for the set of probably best way to put it is there's passive components that are in there, the capacitors and the inductors. And so you need to calibrate it, but it's got a calibration process that walks you through all that. So you don't really need any fancy test equipment. It can basically be its own test equipment, which is really cool. So once you've done that, you put it in the enclosure and then it's ready to go. So this is what it looks like when it's up and running here on 20 meters. 14.020.35 is the frequency. And so you can see with the enclosure there, it's got buttons to change the volume or to tune it or go into menus and so on and do different things. This is the workbench, what it looked like when it was done. Again, before my wife was home, so I could take care of all this before she got there. So yeah, worked well. Then I got it back down to Florida, and that's the entire kit on a table before taking it out to POTA for the first time. It's a pretty cool kit from the standpoint of once you've got it up and running, I mean, it's amazing that for something this inexpensive, it's got a built-in CW decoder, so you can see that bottom row is somebody telling me, thank you, good afternoon, Pat. So you can see I'm having a QSO with somebody and decoding the text that they're sending. It's just been a lot of fun to use. I've got much fancier radios than this one. I've just kind of gotten a kick out of using this one. I suppose a good part because I built it. So it was just kind of fun to put that together. Just a couple, I think I was talking to Bill when I was walking in. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were in California. And one of the things we did on a Saturday was we went to the coast, Santa something. That's like half of California, Santa something. So Santa Cruz. And we rented e-bikes and we went riding these e-bikes up the coast. And there's a few little state parks and state beaches and state this and that all count as POTA entities. I thought, oh, we could go activate a few POTA entities. And I brought this radio setup along with a much larger, the FT891 Yaesu, which is heavier, which also has a heavier battery. And like it's a more substantial kit, but I thought it would be fun to throw all of this in a backpack, hop on bikes and go for a ride and just kind of activate these parks as we went along. So we did that on a Saturday and just had a blast doing it. Yeah, it stopped at this park and found literally a tree log that you see over to the right. There's a bunch of trees. And then past that lighthouse, there were surfers out in the surf. And my wife was watching the surfers while I was doing an activation. So just a ton of fun. And just for the sake of, so I'd have something to show you here. I did an activation yesterday, the 30th. That's yesterday. Yeah, on the way home from work. So just pulled over at Big Creek. It was my 87th activation at Big Creek. So I tend to go there on the way home from work every once in a while. And just to show you what that was like, I've got a short video here. And I'll show you that in a second. But that was a setup. A couple things of interest there. You can see on the left is the radio itself, just a little guy leaned up against its case that I found. I got my paddles over there on the right and the laptop. You can see the coax is the orange cable going out to the drinking fountain. So I often use that drinking fountain to support my end-fed half wave that goes up to a tree, and I've got the carbon fiber mast there just kind of leaned into the tree with the end of the wire. So rather than throw a rope up there, I just tether it to the end of the mast and put it up in the tree. The last time I had activated this park was 10, 11 days ago. And so when I was setting up yesterday, I thought, okay, I've got everything. I can't find, after all telling you all you guys about how organized you should be, like I can't find my antenna. Where's the antenna? Oh, I've got a backup antenna because I always try to carry a backup of everything. So I had a backup antenna. So I thought, well, I'll get that figured out. So I get out there and I start laying out the coax and I look in the drinking fountain and there's my antenna that had sat in the drinking fountain, this guy, for almost 2 weeks out in the rain and everything else. But I was very happy to find that that was still there and got that guy going again. So yeah, in 25 minutes or so, I got my 13 contacts in with just a few watts. Those are the stations I worked, and this is what it looked like on the reverse beacon network. So I was picked up in South America or Costa Rica, I think it was, as well. There's a RBN network station. All right, so I'm going to play a short video now of the activation. I recorded the whole thing, and I record a lot of them, but I just thought for this, give you guys a little bit of sense of what that radio is like. Before I do, if you're not a CW guy, like, is there anybody here that's never been on CW? A few. Okay. So this might be foreign to some of you. So just so you know, I did put the translation on the screen, so you'll see what's happening as I do it. But if CW is new to you, this is some of the lingo that you will find in just a little bit of what CW operators will use when they have a QSO. When you see DE, that means this is. GE is good evening. UR is UR. 5NN is short for 599 because 5NN is shorter than 599. BK is break. TU is thank you. And if maybe you're a CW operator and you've never seen this before, but it's kind of become a thing lately, is to use 72 if you instead of 73 if you're doing QRP. So it's like a little bit less, I guess. That's the idea. Any questions about any of this before we get going? There's one other thing I didn't put up here is dit dit that you will hear at the end of a QSO. I don't know how to explain it, but when I started in radio in 1980, for many decades before, you would end a QSO with one guy saying dit 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 dit, and the other guy go dit dit. And now we've even shortened that, and now all you hear is the dit dit. And I always wonder how many people are new to CW and have no idea the history why that is. But I saw a guy yesterday started a clothing brand. He has hats, t-shirts, and coffee mugs, and all it says is dit dit. So yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so here is the QSO. Again, you'll see the kind of the translation on the screen, and I'll play that, and hopefully everybody can hear this as we go. So a couple guys coming back. So that's a little bit of the activation. I don't know if you could see on the screen, but it was decoding things pretty well on the screen. Like I don't really watch the screen, but I think it does a pretty good job. I'm always impressed that it can decode as it goes for such a low cost item. Yeah, and it's not like the most relaxing audio you'll ever hear. Like it's a little square wave-ish as you listen to it, and but both. When I'm transmitting, it sounds kind of square wave-ish to me. I think when it receives okay. It's lacking a any kind of gain control. So if somebody comes in strong, it'll just blast you. And then, but I'm just impressed that for such a low cost item, low power QRP rig, like I'm getting QSOs around the country pretty easily. So yeah. That's probably about, if you're curious, that must be about 22 words a minute. So it's not super fast, but that's kind of my typical POTA speed, just kind of fun. Oh, there we go. So yeah, that's basically the presentation. You can go to my YouTube channel if you want to learn more. I haven't been putting stuff on there a long time, but if you want to check that out, you can check that out. And yeah, kind of the concluding slide from the AI is, kit building can be fun. Like I found it to be a fun project. I'll probably look for others to build. There's a guy in Marshalltown that I talk to a lot that is on the POTA Discord for Iowa, that he's built a 30-meter version of the same thing and been having fun with that. And so, yeah. Make sure if you're going to jump into kit building, you pick the right tools for the job, you have good soldering techniques, and you do your testing and troubleshooting, and you should be in good shape. So that's kind of the slideshow. Any questions? Yeah. Well, so it's only transmitting at like 3 to 5 watts, so it's not a lot. Receive current, I don't think can be very much, because that battery pack will last just a long, long, long time. So I've never measured it. I could measure it, but I don't think it's consuming very much. The spec sheet would probably tell you too. It might be a little bit of a function of how bright you turn the screen up, but yeah, I think it's just sipping power.
12 volts.
It'll run on 12 volts. Yeah. I think it's fairly broad. I think it's like 9 volts to 12 and a half or something like that, 13. But if you lower the voltage, it will not put out as much power. Yeah, any other questions?
Some people use a USB-C PD trigger cable
and
essentially run it off of a cell phone battery pack charger.
So you could run it off of a USB basically, then.
USB-C.
Yep. 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 Yeah.
Any tips on winding toroids?
Yeah, with this kit, you can buy them pre-wound. Do that as my tip. Yeah, it's worth the money. Yeah, winding toroids is not the most fun thing. So we went to California and did these activations. The last day we were there, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before that, we had some time to kill. My wife and I didn't have any plans for this Saturday, so we went to the Ronald Reagan Museum and they had a little exhibit, but we had been there before. So then we left the museum about noon and we had time to kill. I looked on the POTA map and there was a park that was 10 or 15 miles away, so pretty close to the museum. So said, okay, let's go check out the park. As I'm looking at the details of this park, it's like, oh, this is actually it's like Canyon Creek State Park or something like that. But it has a little bit of history to it. In the middle of the park was the filming location for the TV show and movie MASH. Planet of the Apes movie was filmed there. Logan's Run. Like there are all these movies and TV shows that were filmed in this state park. But to get to the filming location, there was a road that's no longer in use. So you have to go on a 5-mile hike that they said was moderately strenuous. So we said, oh, should we give that a try? Well, guess which radio I was going to take? I was going to take the big heavy one. So threw some water bottles in the backpack, and we had enough time to kill, so we gave it a shot. And also the bridge was out, so you had to do a water crossing, and it got to be a little bit interesting. But we made it across, and we got to the site, set up all this stuff, tried for probably 30 minutes, and didn't make a single contact. And I was really questioning, did the radio die? Like I was pretty sure it had. And I wasn't hearing anything either. Like, is the coax bad? What's going on? But there had been a big solar event that day and just wiped out everybody. So we packed it all up, and my wife, we hiked back to the car. We met some guys that were a little shady on the way back. And what's that?
Were they doing coded?
No, they were 20-somethings, and this one guy, I got to talking to him as we're crossing the bridge that was out, and said, "You guys come here a lot?" "Oh yeah." And so they were kind of chatting, and then they went up ahead of us, and they went off in the woods, and then we caught up with them again. And the one guy goes, "Hey, you want some tequila?" And I said, "No, that's okay." And that's okay. And he goes, "Oh, it makes the hike go better." So but they were just younger guys having fun. So we get back to the car, and I said, well, maybe I'll pull out the Yaesu 891 and go to like 50 watts and see if we can't get some contacts here. Nothing. Didn't work anybody. And my wife said, well, we're not leaving the park until you get your 10. I know. And it was dark, and I'm like, well, we're leaving. So we did not stay. I didn't want to spend the night in the park. So it turned out, knew then it wasn't the radio, it was the conditions. So yeah. All right, anybody have anything else? Otherwise, that's what I've got tonight. There are actually a lot of QRP kits. So if you go to Dayton, they like Dirk goes to Dayton. You're not going this year? They have an event the Thursday night before all the Hamfest starts, and they call it 4 days in May. And it's like all the QRP community comes there, and there's kits left and right. Somebody will have just designed a new kit, but it's not out on the market yet, and so they'll come and show it off. And so there's kits for, gosh, just about everything. You can build your own SWR meters or amplifiers, whatever you want to build. There's a lot of kits out there.
Proof of concept stuff.
Yeah, it's not like 50 years ago where you just say, oh, Heathkit, go get a Heathkit and you'll be good. I think now there's a little bit of everything. I really like this QRP Labs. That was a fun one to build, but a little bit of a challenge. There's another, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. There's another CW QRP kit, CFT1, and it's a younger guy named Jonathan who, I think it's KM4 CFT that designed that. Super nice guy. I met him at Dayton, and he's maybe, I'd be surprised if he's older than 30 years old, and had designed this very nice transceiver from the ground up that really looks great. So I'd like to give that one a try. Trying to think, I'm sure there's a lot of other kits that are out there that I'm not thinking of, but yeah. I'll stop sharing. Okay. There you go, Clint.